This is more like an audio test to see how good this wind muff is in super windy conditions. It's really windy now. And what I'm expecting, what I'm hoping is that the audio quality is still good enough. And if it's not, then I know, hey, if it's windy like that, it's no point in making a video. So with that out of the way, I've been using Dropbox for about 10 years or so. It's an integral part of networking all my distributed computers that are not necessarily in my own home. I've got several around the world. I do spin up the cloud instance on Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS every once in a while. And to synchronize data with these services, I use Dropbox, or I have used Dropbox until literally last week. And I very much remember vividly when my colleague Terry Wood, he was an extraordinary man. He had colon cancer, colorectal cancer, the whole thing removed. It's crazy. And I remember him introducing himself when he was new. It's back in 2008, 2009. And he said, hey, I'm Terry, I've got a bag and I've got a bit of a run-in with colon cancer. And we're all thinking, oh my God, too much information. But it was his way of dealing with it and telling us up front, hey, you know, I'm severely disabled. I've had this run-in and I'm back, baby, I'm back. And I can do this freaking job. And that was awesome. It was very, very inspiring to me. And yeah, we've been friends ever since really, until he died tragically a few years ago, because his cancer recurred, and this time it came back in his stomach, and he didn't make it, couldn't digest food anymore, and there was literally no cure. Terrible. But Terry introduced me to Dropbox, and that was the point of the story. Terry introduced me to Dropbox, and I remember him saying back then, hey, I know you've got servers all around the world, but maybe this is going to come in handy, and follow my link and I'll get, I don't know, a little bit of extra storage space, and you get some extra as well on top of whatever was offered back then. I think it was about 5 gigabytes that they offered. That was nice, that was good, and I signed up. Didn't quite know what to do with it at first, and I was thinking, well, maybe something's gonna come up. And back then Dropbox, I believe, were the first to break into this cloud storage space. I remember there was Amazon back then, but it was very difficult to get that going. So while they offered you 5 gigabytes, you had to be a programmer to make use of it. And Dropbox made it so super easy. They had the iOS client, they had a Windows client, they had a Mac client, they had the source code, so you were able to build this for any Linux distribution that you wanted. It integrated with really weird services like the first generation of the Amazon Kindle, the Kindle Fire, and all kinds of Android distributions. And it was just the way they did cloud storage was different to whoever else did it. I remember Microsoft service was called SkyDrive back then. I don't know why, and it got renamed to OneDrive at one point. But none of these were as elegant and clever and just slick as Dropbox was. And I seem to remember I referred so many people to Dropbox because I really liked the service. And it was the solution to a problem that I didn't even know I had. It's crazy, but back then I used to synchronize things with memory sticks, and that worked okay, but only when you had the memory stick with you, and if the device that you were accessing was in fact physically accessible. So there were instances where the computer was just too far away, I didn't want to get up, but there's also other instances where my computer was in Las Vegas, for example, and I just can't go there and pop a drive in for a couple of minutes. That's just not really how convenience works. So that's really where Dropbox came in handy, and I use it still to this day. So I have about 20 computers networked on one Dropbox account, and if I save a Photoshop file on one computer, I can pick it up in another computer, and that's just, you know, very, very convenient. But it's also things like make a thumbnail on computer A and then upload it with computer B, or make a compilation on computer C, have 5 different computers render a long animation, for example, with an image sequence. Everything gets dropped into the same cloud folder, and then I go, and whenever they're all ready, I'll make an animation out of it. So those types of things, very, very handy, very cool. And of course, it's been completely free. And what makes this so tragic is that I now rely so much on Dropbox that it's caught me as a bit of a surprise when Dropbox went ahead and announced last week, hey, you know, the whatever storage space you have, you can now only link 3 computers to your Dropbox account. So previously it was unlimited, and whenever I had a new computer, it was counted as a new unit that was linked to my account for syncability. And you can still access them in a web browser, but it's about syncability. So install the client and have this thing seamlessly sync everything with the cloud. That only now works with 3 devices, unless you give them $100 a year. And that's where things get a little bit weird. I mean, they've been enticing me to upgrade for years, and I think what I'm severely lacking with Dropbox is a price option. I'm very happy to support Dropbox, but not with $100 a year. That's just too much for me. Also, I don't need 1 terabyte of space in the cloud. That really isn't what I need. Maybe we can talk about 100, perhaps 200 gigabytes for something like, I don't know, $30 a year. But that's not what they're offering. It's either a terabyte for $100 or it's nothing. And that's long been a thorn in my eye. And now that I've got 2 new computers, one is already in my home that needs to be able to access all my cloud documents, such as titles. You know, this is very important when I do my live streams. I have all these little bits and bobs and knickknacks and files and videos and audio files that need to be in a central place so that a backup can indeed access them. And it turns out that now my new computer, the new Z600, cannot sync with my Dropbox account anymore because I'm now over my limit. So the Z800 that's going to come in a few days will have the same problem. So I won't be able to synchronize my data seamlessly there. So that was a bit of a surprise for me because I hadn't realized how much I had been relying on Dropbox for so long. And granted, I've been getting free access, so perhaps I do owe them something. But at the same time, there's so many these days. There's so many other cloud space providers out there who are just as slick nowadays. They weren't always, but they are now all nowadays so slick, all of them. I mean, there's OneDrive to begin with. For $99 you get free access to Microsoft Office 365 and you get a terabyte of space. Apple's iCloud service, same thing. It's purchasable in much smaller chunks, and so I'm with them for my iOS backup, so that's important for me. Adobe Cloud Storage, they didn't even have the Creative Cloud when I started using Dropbox, but nowadays they have the Creative Cloud, and even on the minimal $10 a month Photoshop plan, you get 20 gigabytes of free space, and there's no limit to the amount of clients you can add. And so it just continues from there, really. There's so many other providers. Box.net, SugarSync, if they're still around. There's Evernote. There's literally countless of providers. And they're all kind of bending over backwards to make sure we sign up with them and use their cloud storage. So I was kind of forced to evaluate these 2 other options, namely OneDrive, which is built into Microsoft Windows. And it's finally, in 2019, as slick as Dropbox was 6 years ago, really. They never were. They always had sync issues on the Mac, and even if it did work with Windows, there was always some kind of Mac issue. So I've evaluated that, and I've also had a look at the Creative Cloud file syncing thing, and that's also very slick. I haven't tried that on mobile yet, but sadly for me, just for usability's sake, that is the end of Dropbox. And it's such a shame too, because I really enjoyed that service for all these years I've been using it, and it's still my favorite. But it's just, you know, we can't agree on a price. If it would be something cheaper than $100 a year, I would literally just purchase that and be done with it. But they don't offer it, so they've lost themselves a sale with me. Long-standing, trusty customer. Happy to give them some amount of money, but it's just not working out. $100 a year is just too much for me. I'm sorry, Dropbox.